A revered Ohio pastor and his wife cut down in a hail of bullets.
In a world where families should provide love and support, these shocking cases expose a chilling betrayal of that trust. Whether it's Daniel's tragic crime or a 12-year-old's hatred for his father, age doesn't excuse violence. These sad stories reveal the terrifying truth of familial bonds twisted into brutality. Let's begin.
To escape what he was going to do, he decided to kill both of them and to make it look like a murder-suicide.
Daniel Petric, a 16-year-old teenager from Wellington, Ohio, made headlines after a shocking and tragic act of violence in his family home. Petric, a seemingly normal high school student with no apparent history of violence, found himself at the center of a deadly confrontation with his parents over a video game. Petric had become deeply engrossed in playing the violent video game Halo 3, spending hours every day immersed in its intense action. The game, known for its fierce battles and graphic content, had become more than just a pastime for him. It was an obsession. His father, Mark Petric, was alarmed by his son's growing addiction to the game and worried about its impact on his well-being. Concerned about the negative effects, Mark decided to confiscate the game, hoping to curb his son's obsession. He warned Daniel that if he did not stop playing, he would have to leave the house. This decision sparked a fierce argument between father and son. Mark's warning was met with resistance from Daniel, who was infuriated by his father's actions. Feeling betrayed and misunderstood, Daniel's anger escalated, and he became more determined to play the game. In a fit of rage, he chose to take matters into his own hands, ignoring his father's authority and escalating the situation further. The tension between them grew as the conflict deepened, marking a turning point in their relationship and highlighting the destructive potential of excessive gaming and unresolved family issues.
At your mom first?
No, it was at my dad first.
Do you remember that look on her face?
I do.
On the evening of October 20th, 2007, a tragic event unfolded in a quiet household. Petric, a young man, had a plan in mind that would change his life and his family's forever. Disgruntled with his parents, he decided to steal his father's gun and a video game, intending to confront them in a violent manner. Petric made his way into the living room where his parents were, asking them to close their eyes under some pretense. Without warning, he opened fire, shooting both of them. The first victim was his mother, Susan, who fell to the ground, fatally wounded. Despite the shock and horror of the situation, Petric's father was not immediately killed. Though seriously injured, he somehow survived, struggling to stay alive. In a desperate attempt to cover up his crime, Petric staged the scene. He placed the gun in his father's hand to make it appear as though he had been the one to commit murder before taking his own life. With his plan set in motion, Petric fled the scene, leaving behind a tale of devastation and confusion. He said his father shot his mother first and then killed himself. And at that time, I was in my bedroom, and when I came out, he also put the gun on me. But later, the police would soon unravel the grim truth, discovering the horrific actions that led to the death of Susan and the near-fatal wounding of his father by Petric.
Plan that I had formulated to make it look like my father had done all this was not plausible. It wasn't even realistic.
The crime came to light when Petric's sister, Heidi, unexpectedly arrived home earlier than planned. As she approached the house, she heard unsettling groans coming from inside. Concerned, Heidi forced her way in and discovered the grim scene. Without wasting a moment, she dialed the police, her voice shaking as she reported what she had found. In a panic, Petric, the perpetrator, tried to flee the scene. He quickly got into his car and drove away, hoping to escape. However, the authorities soon caught up with him, and he was arrested shortly afterward. During his trial, Petric's defense team argued that he was not fully responsible for his actions. They claimed that his addiction to violent video games, coupled with the stress from a previous injury, had significantly impaired his mental state. They suggested that these factors prevented him from fully understanding the severity of his crimes. Despite the defense's argument, the court did not find it convincing. Petric was convicted of aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, and tampering with evidence. The jury decided that, despite his claims of mental unfitness, his actions had clear and tragic consequences, leading to a conviction that reflected the severity of the crime. But during the trial, Petric got emotional and started crying as he regretted his act.
It's our day. It's very emotional.
Throughout the trial, Petric appeared remorseful, often seen crying, especially when his father expressed forgiveness and regret for what happened. His father, however, stated that Daniel still did not fully understand why he committed such a horrific act. The tragic case raised discussions on video game addiction and its potential effects on young minds, as well as on issues like gun control. Petric was sentenced to life in prison with parole after 23 years. Daniel Petric's violent outburst over a video game marked a tragic turning point. But next, a young boy's actions led to a heartbreaking loss for an entire family.
The boy charged with the deaths of 5 people shed tears.
In the quiet town of Eureka, a devastating event unfolded in April 2019 that would change the lives of many forever. A 9-year-old boy, Kyle Alwood, was accused of starting a fire that claimed the lives of 5 people at Timberline Mobile Home Park. On April 6th, tragedy struck when a fire consumed a trailer home, claiming the lives of 2 adults and 3 children, including members of Kyle's family. The victims, who succumbed to smoke inhalation, were identified as Catherine Murray, 69, Jason Wall, 34, Rose Alwood, 2, Damian Wall, 2, and Ariel Wall, 1. Amidst the chaos, Kyle's mother, Tristyn Alwood, survived, as did Kyle himself. The young boy escaped the flames, running to his grandparents' house, pounding on their door and screaming for help.
He is accused of intentionally setting fire to his home back in April, which led to the deaths of 5 of his relatives.
Authorities later determined the fire had been set intentionally, and their investigation led to an unthinkable conclusion. Kyle was charged with first-degree murder, arson, and aggravated arson. Given his age, the legal process became unprecedented and delicate.
Accused of trying to kill his 5-year-old sister appeared before a judge for the second time.
Woodford County Circuit Court Judge Charles Feeney took painstaking care to explain the gravity of the charges and the legal proceedings to Kyle, who often appeared confused by the complex language and concepts. Kyle's public defender, Peter Deluski, remained by his side, offering reassurance and support. The courtroom was somber as the reality of the situation weighed on everyone present. A child navigating a system designed for adults, accused of a crime that defied comprehension. During the 33-minute arraignment, 9-year-old Kyle sat quietly, his demeanor calm despite the gravity of the situation. As the hearing neared its conclusion, however, the weight of the accusation seemed to overwhelm him. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he began to sob softly, his emotions breaking through. His paternal grandparents were at his side, offering gentle comfort as they led him out of the courtroom. Katrina had suffered an unimaginable tragedy, losing her fiancé, her children, and her grandmother in the devastating fire. Yet she characterized the incident not as a crime, but as a heartbreaking mistake. In an emotional appeal, she called for understanding and compassion, urging others to see Kyle's humanity in the face of an unfathomable situation. During the legal proceedings, Tristyn Alwood, Kyle's biological mother, stood firm in her public support for her son. Kyle's mother said, "People make mistakes. It's a horrible tragedy, but it is still not something to throw his life away over."
People make mistakes, and that's what this is. Yes, it was a horrible tragedy, but it's still not something to throw his life away over.
The case took another turn when the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services petitioned the court for a gag order. Their request was granted, effectively silencing all parties involved from discussing the case publicly outside the courtroom. This added a layer of complexity to an already emotionally charged situation, shrouding the case in further uncertainty. Although Kyle could not be incarcerated due to his age, a conviction might result in probation lasting until he turned 21, along with therapy, counseling, and psychological evaluation. The legal process was set to continue, with the next hearing scheduled for November 22nd. Kyle's fate now rested in the hands of the court, guided by the complexities of juvenile justice and the emotional weight of the tragedy. The case left the community grappling with conflicting emotions. For some, Kyle's actions seemed monstrous. For others, they reflected the mistakes of a child who could not fully comprehend the consequences of his actions. Tristyn Alwood urged people to see beyond the tragedy, reminding them that her son was not a monster, but a child who made a grave error. One of the victim's mothers said, "I lost my daughter, and she was just amazing. She got me out of bed."
She was just amazing. She got me out of bed. She made my days better. And it hurts her not being here.
The case highlighted the fragile line between justice and compassion, leaving a lingering impact on all who followed its heartbreaking developments. Kyle Alwood's tragic mistake caused a devastating fire. Next, a violent act fueled by obsession erupts in a family, changing their lives forever.
In 2007, Alec Kreider, a 16-year-old high school student, was arrested for the murders of Thomas and Lisa Haynes and their son Kevin, a friend of Alec's.
On May 12, 2007, a horrifying event unfolded in Manheim Township, Pennsylvania, when 16-year-old Alec Kreider brutally murdered his friend and classmate Kevin Haynes, along with Kevin's parents, Thomas and Lisa Haynes. This tragic case shocked the quiet community and left unanswered questions about Alec's motive. The Haynes family's peaceful night turned into a nightmare when their home became the scene of a horrific act. In the dead of night, Alec entered the house without any sign of forced entry. Quietly, he made his way to the parents' bedroom, where he viciously stabbed Thomas and Lisa. Thomas died instantly, while Lisa was left gravely wounded. Alec then moved to Kevin's room. Awakened by the intruder, Kevin fought back, but Alec's strength overwhelmed him, and Kevin was fatally stabbed. Not done with his rampage, Alec returned to the parents' room, ending Lisa's life by slitting her throat before fleeing into the night. Maggie Haynes, Kevin's sister, had unexpectedly come home from college that evening. She awoke to terrifying noises and the unmistakable smell of blood. Acting on instinct, she escaped to a neighbor's house where she frantically called for help. The Haynes family home was eerily silent when authorities finally arrived, their response delayed by miscommunication during the 911 call. Inside, they found a terrible scene where the family had been killed. As they searched the house, they noticed bloody footprints leading to the bathroom. It looked like someone had tried to clean up the mess. The police soon discovered that the person was Alec Kreider. Although Alec ran away that night, the clues began to point straight to him. A month later, the case took a shocking turn. Alec's father went to the police, upset, and told him his son had confessed to the murders. Alec was arrested on June 16, 2007. No one could clearly explain why Alec did it, but in his journal, investigators discovered strange and unusual words. Alec wrote in his journal about hating happy people. It seemed his dark thoughts had led to this heartbreaking crime. His motive was unclear, according to judges.
We had the unique ability to look at his journals that he had prepared both for and after the crime.
Alec pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. His sentencing reflected the severity of his crimes, though his age prevented the possibility of a death penalty. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Miller v. Alabama that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles were unconstitutional. This decision made Alec eligible for a resentencing hearing. However, on January 20th, 2017, before the hearing could occur, Alec died by suicide in his prison cell. The tragedy shook the community, leaving friends and family heartbroken over the loss of the Haynes family, who were known for their kindness and close relationships. The crime felt even more painful because no one understood why Alec did it. Alec's father expressed his sorrow in his book Refuse to Drown, stating, "He is not a monster, but what he did was monstrous."
He goes on to say, he was not the monster so many want to simply write him off as. He did something monstrous, but that is only part of Alec.
His words reflected the community's grief as they tried to find comfort and make sense of such a terrible loss. Alec's death in prison brought a complicated end to a dark chapter. While justice was served, the case remains a haunting reminder of a family lost and a young man's inexplicable descent into violence. Alec Kreider's brutal crime shocked the community, but next, a young boy's actions led to a heartbreaking loss for an entire family.
Stand currently is Alex King. He is one of the young men accused of actually brutally beating or helping to beat his father to death.
On November 26, 2001 in Cantonment, Florida, Terry Lee King, a 40-year-old father, was bludgeoned to death by his 2 sons, 13-year-old Derek and 12-year-old Alex King. The boys committed the murder and then set fire to their family's home to hide their crime. Derek and Alex, 2 young brothers, lived in fear of their father, whom they claimed subjected them to relentless mental mistreatment. The boys said their father would often stare them down and punish them with harsh spankings, leaving deep emotional scars. Eventually, this mistreatment pushed them to a breaking point, leading to a horrific act, the murder of their father. In the beginning, the brothers insisted they acted alone, driven by years of torment. But as the investigation progressed, their story began to shift, becoming more complicated with each retelling.
Were influenced by another man named Ricky Chavez.
They soon accused Ricky Chavez, a family friend, of manipulating them into committing the crime. According to Derek and Alex, Chavez had convinced them to take such drastic measures and even suggested that he, not they, was responsible for their father's death. To further complicate the case, Chavez faced accusations of molesting Alex, though he was acquitted in a separate trial. The brothers' changing accounts and the dark secrets of their family made the case all the more tragic, leaving a community grappling with questions about the depths of the boys' suffering and the truth behind the murder they committed. After the tragic murder, the King brothers found themselves in the spotlight of a highly publicized trial. In a twist of legal proceedings, the court made the unusual decision to try both Chavez and the King brothers together. As the trial unfolded, Chavez was acquitted, but the King brothers faced a much harsher fate. Initially, they were convicted of second-degree murder, their fate seemingly sealed.
Older brother Derek is now 14. Alex, just a year younger, turned 13 last month. Despite their youth, the boys will be tried as adults for their father's murder.
However, a surprising turn of events occurred when the judge determined that their due process rights had been violated, a ruling that led to their conviction being overturned. This unexpected development set the stage for a significant shift in the legal battle. Instead of a lengthy retrial, the King brothers entered into mediation. After much deliberation, they decided to plead guilty to a lesser charge of third-degree murder. The decision came in November 2002, marking the conclusion of a long and tumultuous legal journey. Though the brothers faced the consequences of their actions, the process was far from straightforward, leaving behind a complex story of justice, legal action, and the pursuit of fairness in the courtroom. Derek and Alex King were both sentenced to prison. Derek received 8 years, and Alex was given 7 years. In 2008, Alex was released after serving 6 years, and Derek was released in 2009 after serving 7 years. Both men walked out of prison, each carrying the weight of their past, but hopeful for a second chance at life.
We did make a mistake. However, there are a select few individuals who decide to have faith and just blindly hope in.
The case drew widespread attention, sparking debates about whether the brothers were truly victims of mistreatment or if they had acted out of anger. A book was published claiming the boys were innocent, while others believed the truth was more complicated. The emotional aftermath of the case continues to fuel controversy and mixed opinions, especially regarding the boys' motives and the justice they received. Next, we turn to the case of Matthew Borges, a teen whose horrifying actions resulted in a crime so brutal it left investigators and the public grappling for understanding.
Go chill with him at his crib alone, drink, smoke, and play it off.
Kill him. Bring duffel bag, wear gloves, clean up mess, wear bags on shoes.
In November 2016, the body of 16-year-old Lee Manuel Viloria Polino was found by a dog walker along the banks of a river in Massachusetts. His head and his hands had been completely severed from his body. He was also found with more than 70 stabs in his body. His body was in such bad shape that medical examiners could not tell whether these stabs and the beheading had occurred before or after he was murdered. 15-year-old Matthew Borges was one of Viloria Polino's friends. He was soon questioned about his role in the murder. Overwhelming evidence led him to be arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of the 16-year-old. According to the investigation, the reason this gruesome murder occurred was jealousy. According to classmates, even though Borges was a quiet kid, he had a short fuse and got into a lot of fights, probably because of his troubled family life. In school, Borges dated a girl named Leilani de Jesus, who described him as possessive in the 9 months they were together. The two of them were friends with Viloria Polino. One day, Borges saw de Jesus and Viloria Polino having lunch together and got jealous. He caused a scene and had to be removed from the hall. Because of this, Borges accused de Jesus of cheating, even though she did nothing of the sort. In their second year of high school, it seemed that Borges had moved on because he started talking to a girl named Stephanie Soriano. She was also friends with Viloria Polino. This made him even more jealous, and he threatened to kill any guy who got close to Soriano. In a text, Borges told her, "I think of killing someone and I smirk. I like the sound of it, the idea of causing pain." Soriano tried to prevent him from doing anything crazy. However, this wouldn't last long because of the horrible incident that would happen. A month before Viloria Polino went missing, Borges threatened murder in a Facebook post. He wrote, "Guys, I'm gonna kill someone on Halloween. I'm not lying. So if you hear someone dead on the news, we know I just want to say that y'all expletives gonna look at me differently." On November 18, 2016, Viloria Polino went missing and his body was found in a gruesome state 2 weeks later. According to testimony, Borges lured Viloria Polino out of the house while his 4 other friends robbed his home of electronics and clothes. One of Borges' collaborators said that Borges told him that he stabbed Viloria Polino and beheaded him. When Matthew Borges expressed no emotion that Viloria Polino was missing, the people around him became suspicious. After a few days, Borges texted Soriano and told her to delete all their conversations. This would later be used as evidence against him in court. When Borges was asked if he killed Viloria Polino, Borges lied and said no. But because of the witness testimony, Borges was charged with his murder. He was eventually tried as an adult in 2019 when he was already 18 years old. In court, the person who saw the victim's body testified.
As I approached, I got closer, I saw her really sniffing at a particular area, so I pulled her back, and when I looked, kind of second-guessed myself, I thought I saw a dead body, but I wasn't too sure.
Polino's hands were never found, but his head was found wrapped in a plastic shopping bag. At trial, a disturbing entry from Borges' journal was read to the people.
Go chill with him at his crib alone, drink, smoke, and play it off.
Kill him. Bring duffel bag, wear gloves, clean up mess, wear bags on shoes.
During the court proceedings, Matthew Borges showed no emotion. Valoria Polino's mother addressed the court in tears and talked about how hard the murder of her son hit her family.
On November 18, 2016, our world was irreversibly changed when Limano was taken from us.
During all of this, Matthew Borges remained stoic and showed no remorse or emotions, even while his sentence was read. When he was also asked if he wished to address the court, he answered in the negative. Because he was a minor when he committed the crime, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. This was the maximum sentence that could be given to him. Following Jesse Osborne's chilling story, we turn to Daniel Marsh, a teenager whose dark impulses shattered the peace of a California neighborhood.
First look at the 16-year-old accused of murdering an elderly couple in David. Prosecutors say the man there with the tie, Daniel Marsh, hid in the couple's home.
Ever since Daniel Marsh was 10 years old, he thought of nothing else but killing people. He was fascinated by the idea of killing people and causing them pain. This may have been because his parents had gone through a divorce after his mother had an affair with Marsh's former female teacher. Since then, he thought of torturing his mother's partner before slitting her throat or strangling her. He also started dreaming of killing more people. By age 14, he started using alcohol and marijuana. All of these contributed to his diagnosis. He was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, manic depressive disorder, dissociative disorder, and depersonalization. By the time he was 15, he had committed arson and killed at least 3 animals. This wasn't enough for him. He wanted to be a serial killer. By April 2013, Marsh was 15 years old and he decided to bring his homicidal ideas to life. His victims were 87-year-old Oliver Northup and his wife, 76-year-old Claudia Malpin. On April 13, 2013, Marsh, who was now 15 years old, set out to find his victims. He had planned the murders extensively. He taped the bottom of his shoes so that he would not leave behind footprints, and he wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints or DNA. He also wore all black clothing and a black face mask, and armed himself with a 6-inch buck knife. In the early mornings of April 14th, Marsh went out and checked between 40 to 50 homes for any open doors or windows. According to his confession, he finally found Maupin and Northup's condo. They had an open window and he sliced the screen to enter the house. According to him, he saw the couple sleeping and stood over them for about 10 minutes, deciding how he would kill them. It was there that Maupin woke up, saw Marsh, and started screaming. Marsh stabbed her in the torso repeatedly. As she was being stabbed to death, Maupin was begging Marsh to stop, but that motivated him even more. He stabbed her 67 times before stabbing Northup 61 times from his head to his legs. Marsh continued to stab the couple long after they were dead. He then brutally mutilated their body. He disemboweled the 2 of them, tried to take Maupin's eye out, and pulled fat out of her leg and torso. He cut open Northup's forehead and put a drinking glass in his stomach and a cell phone in Maupin's stomach. After he was done, he left the home with a baseball bat looking for his next victim. He never found one. Northup and Maupin were discovered by their daughter and the police after they were absent from church. Marsh's DNA was not at the murder scene as well. Marsh was only arrested after a friend he bragged to went to the police about what he heard. He said that Marsh showed him the souvenirs he kept from the murders.
I just know that somebody broke into this old couple's house and stabbed them, killed them.
Why are you ruining my life? Why should I? I'm not ruining your life. I'm trying to solve a homicide, a double homicide.
On June 17th, Marsh was brought in for questioning, and after 3 hours and 30 minutes of denying his crimes, he confessed to what he did.
That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to do it. I lost control.
He also described to the investigator how he would have killed him if he was his victim.
I feel empathy for them, and whether I like that or not, the way it is, it's just like, I want to hurt people. I want to kill people, but I don't want to want that. I wish it wasn't that way.
Marsh was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special enhancements. These included intentionally killing more than one person, demonstrating exceptional depravity in the killings, and inflicting torture in the commission of murders. His trial began when he was 17 years old, and he was tried as an adult. Marsh smirked and laughed at some point during his first appearance in court. Because his attorneys argued that he was not guilty by reason of insanity, a series of psychological tests were taken. One of them was the psychopathy checklist. Marsh scored 35.8 out of 40, which was higher than Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and John Wayne Gacy, 3 of the most prolific serial killers in America. The trial lasted 5 weeks, and at the end of it, Marsh was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 52 years to life in prison. In 2021, his parole was denied because he wasn't rehabilitated, and mostly because the depravity of his crimes meant that society was in danger if he was ever let out. Where Daniel Marsh acted on his own accord, the same cannot be said for Konrad Schaefer. who would do anything to feel like he was cool, including killing people.
I was just like the pause that I saw families that I've heard.
Konrad Schaefer was 15 years old when he met Victoria Rios, Juan Sebastian Muriel, and David Damas. This friendship would turn into something that would terrorize Osceola County for 2 weeks. A few months after the group met, Konrad Schaefer's father had given him a firearm, even though he wasn't old enough to legally own one. For some reason, he thought this was a pass to commit gruesome crimes in the community. In 2013, Schaefer and his friends went on a shooting spree that lasted over 2 weeks. For those weeks, Schaefer shot up more than 20 homes, leaving multiple people paralyzed and traumatized with his actions. Many of the homes carried memories of the shootings with bullet holes in walls and doors. 2 homes were particularly devastated because of the actions of Schaefer and his friends. On June 26, 2013, Schaefer was driving down the street in his father's car looking for someone to attack. Armed with the firearm, he saw 17-year-old David Guerrero walking to the bus stop on the way to work around 6 a.m. He then shot Guerrero because he thought it would be fun to kill a person for no apparent reason. On June 6th, Schaefer and his friends planned to kill another victim. 22-year-old Eric Rupnerine was in his home that night when Victoria Rios, the female of the group, showed up at his door and offered him sex for $300. She lured him to the door, and that was when Damas rushed into the home and robbed Rupnerine. It looks like this was the only intention until Schaefer shot him in the face and stabbed him multiple times while he was still breathing. They left him dead with a butcher knife on his body. They stole an Xbox, a TV, and $300 and left the home. Schaefer and his friends were arrested and charged with murder, home invasion, and grand theft. All the teens were tried separately, and in court, Schaefer was listless and showed no remorse as the court proceedings went on. Schaefer droned on in his apology without any emotion. He asked for the forgiveness of the victims' families and said he wished it never happened. Schaefer showed no emotion as he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years in prison. Next, we examine the disturbing case of Jesse Osborne, a teenager whose actions brought unimaginable tragedy to a quiet community.
I don't exactly know why I did this, but I just ask that you give me hope for a future and get me help, because I do need help.
On September 28, 2016, Townsville Elementary School joined the list of American schools that suffered shootings. The perpetrator was 14-year-old Jesse Osborne. Osborne had been homeschooled after he was expelled from Townsville Elementary School for bringing a hatchet and machete to school in the early months of 2016. He had also said that he wanted to kill at least 50 to 60 people and wanted to be like the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooter, Adam Lanza. Hours before the school shooting, Osborne shot and killed his father before driving to the school in a black pickup truck with a .40 caliber pistol. He crashed the fence and started firing into the air with the pistol while shouting, "I hate my life." He then jumped the fence and started firing at students for 12 seconds until a volunteer firefighter stopped him after his gun jammed. One student was shot in the foot and a female teacher was shot in the shoulder. The third student, 6-year-old Jacob Hall, was shot in the leg. This gunshot wound caused massive blood loss and Hall went into cardiac arrest. Even though he went through extensive surgery, Jacob Hall passed away on October 1st, 2016. Jesse Osborne was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder for the deaths of Hall and his father, 3 counts of attempted murder, and 5 counts of possessing a weapon. Because of the levity of his actions, he faced life in prison without parole. At first, Jesse Osborne pleaded not guilty to all his charges. However, 3 months after the mass shootings, Osborne pleaded guilty to all charges and waived the right to a jury trial because his lawyer convinced him that this was his best bet. Osborne was arrested as an adult, and on November 13, 2019, Osborne was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and 30 years for attempted murder charges.
I don't exactly know why I did this, but I just ask that you give me hope for a future and get me help, because I do need help.
In court, Osborne showed no emotion, but at the time he was called to speak, he cried as he asked the judge to give him hope for the future. He never exactly apologized for what he did before he was led away.
I hope that after you read this, you will understand that Jeff was more than a byproduct of a school shooting, but a father, husband, son, brother, uncle, and friend.
Osborne's uncle also spoke about his brother, Jeff Osborne, in court, talking about how he would be missed. The mother of Jacob Hall also talked about how she forgave Osborne but would never forget what he did to her son. Jesse Osborne is incarcerated in the Kirkland Correctional Institution. From one chilling case to another, we turn to John Totherow, a man whose actions defied comprehension and revealed a sinister side of humanity. In May 2022, police officers were called to a home in York County, South Carolina, because they believed an armed intruder was present. The house belonged to Kenny and Alethea Totherow and their 14-year-old son, John Totherow. On the unfortunate day, Kenny kissed his wife and son goodbye, not knowing that this was the last day anything would be peaceful in his life again. He had checked in with his wife around lunch and told her he would see her later. In a later interview, he said, "Little did I know all hell would break loose in my home." When Kenny was on his way back home, he was horrified to see that a SWAT team had shut down his entire street. To make matters worse, he was informed that his home was why this happened. What he was told completely turned his life upside down. His wife, Alethea, had been shot 12 times and had died from those wounds. What made this even worse was that his son, 14-year-old John, was the one who killed his wife. Finding out that his son had murdered his mother changed his life completely. John himself was charged with murder and arrested as a juvenile. The motive for the crime was never given. Initially, John's name was also withheld from the public. By September 2023, John was already 16 when he was finally tried as an adult due to a complicated plea deal he took. The solicitor's office reduced John's charges to voluntary manslaughter and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime.
How could you still love your son? Very simple. My son was a gift from God.
During his sentencing, his father pleaded with the court to give his son a second chance at life and asked that he should not get life in prison. In court, Kenny Totherow talked about how his son was a gift. He said that he felt that people would ask him why he still loved his son after what he did to his mother. However, he simply said that he did because God gave him his son. While John didn't say anything in court, he looked really small as he was led through the court proceedings. In the clips that were available of him, he had an expression that could be interpreted as fear. Ultimately, John was sentenced to 28 years in prison. According to the judge, he could only be released before his sentence is up if he served up to 85%. His father expressed the pain of knowing that he'll never be able to go to a game with his son or even see him outside again since he was almost 60 at the time of his son's sentencing. Kenny hugged his son tightly before he was led away. Next, we uncover the case of Aiden Fucci, a teen whose shocking crime shattered the lives of those around him.
So Tristyn Bailey, Aiden Fucci, they went to school together at Patriot Oaks Academy. Both lived in an upper middle class neighborhood, pretty much had zero crime. May 9th, 2021, Bailey goes missing.
Tristyn Bailey was born in January 2008. She was the youngest of 5 children and spent her first years growing up in sunny Singapore. Everyone who knew Tristyn described her as an incredible friend with boundless energy. The Bailey family eventually returned to the United States and settled in St. Johns County, Florida. In May 2021, Tristyn was a 7th grader at Patriot Oaks Academy, living a typical teenage girl's life. She was happy, popular, and a cheerleader. However, things changed on May 9th, 2021, when Tristyn's mother went to her bedroom to wake her up and discovered she was nowhere to be found.
49 of the stab wounds were located on her hands, arms, legs.
Tragically, hours later, a person walking through a wooded area on Saddlestone Drive near Jacksonville stumbled upon a retention bond and couldn't help but notice what appeared to be a mannequin. Upon closer inspection, they realized it wasn't a mannequin, but the body of a young girl they'd all come to know and love. It was Tristyn. The medical examiner's report revealed a shocking discovery. Tristyn had been stabbed multiple times, with a staggering total of nearly 120 wounds. Shockingly, many of those wounds were found to be defensive, indicating that she had fought for her life. As crime scene investigators meticulously combed the area, they stumbled upon crucial evidence. A buck knife missing a tip was discovered in the pond near Tristyn's body. However, the missing tip was found in an even more disturbing location, lodged in Tristyn's head. Multiple witnesses came forward, stating that they had seen 14-year-old Aiden Fucci and Tristyn together before she was reported missing. These statements, coupled with Aiden's ever-changing stories when questioned by police, added fuel to the fire. One of the stories Aiden told investigators involved an altercation between the two, where he claimed that Tristyn had touched his privates, prompting him to push her away physically. According to Aiden, Tristyn fell to the ground and hit her head. After being questioned by the police while sitting in a patrol car, Aiden took pictures and videos and posted them on Snapchat. In one post, Aiden asked, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristyn lately?" At midnight on May 10th, 2021, the police conducted a search of Aiden's home in search of evidence connecting him to Tristyn's murder. Inside the room belonging to Aiden, investigators discovered a sheath matching the knife found near Tristyn's body. Additionally, they found clothing stained with blood. 3 hours later, Aiden was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. However, the charges were later upgraded to first-degree murder after further investigation and witness statements. Aiden was held without bond as the police delved deeper into his case. When the police spoke to Aiden's friends, they revealed that Aiden had admitted to them that he was going to kill someone by taking them into the woods and stabbing them. Sophie Bauman, Aiden's ex, shared a shocking revelation as well. She stated that one time when Aiden was playing around with her, he pretended to stab her and later told her that he heard voices in his head. Aiden's alleged actions, combined with the evidence presented against him, portrayed him as a troubled and dangerous young man. In a shocking turn of events, Aiden's mother, Crystal Smith, was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence. The accusation stated that Crystal had washed blood off her son's jeans, potentially hindering the investigation. However, despite the initial charges, she was later released. As jury selection was set to take place in February 2023, Aiden pleaded guilty to first-degree murder on February 6th. In a letter written after the incident, Aiden expressed remorse for the pain he had caused Tristyn's family. Aiden's remorse did not spare him the consequences of his actions. On March 24, 2023, he was given a maximum sentence of life in prison, with a minimum parole eligibility of 25 years.
This case is probably the most difficult and shocking case that this county in St. Johns County has.
Judge R. Lee Smith described the case as difficult and shocking, emphasizing that Tristyn was murdered for no reason other than Aiden's internal desire to feel the thrill of taking another person's life. To symbolize the pain and suffering endured by Tristyn's family, one of Tristyn's sisters dropped 144 stone hearts into a glass jar. Each heart represented the number of times Tristyn had been stabbed. As each loved one of Tristyn read their statements, the room was filled with a mix of emotions. The pain, anger, and sadness were palpable in the air. With each passing sentence, the jar of hearts stood in front of them, symbolizing the shattered remains of their hearts. The crimes committed by these brutal teen killers reveal a darkness that defies their age and leaves a lasting impact on their victims' families. Their courtroom reactions show just how chilling their stories truly are. But the exploration of such shocking cases doesn't end here. The next video on screen dives even deeper into the most jaw-dropping and heart-stopping moments you won't want to miss. Watch now to continue uncovering the unimaginable.